And then the governor proposes very significant ongoing investments in two newish programs. And we have new acronyms here. UTK, which is Universal Transitional Kindergarten. The governor puts $1 billion of funding to add additional 2 months of TKers. Currently, TK is available for all students who turn 5 between September 2nd and December 2nd. And next year, additional funding will be provided for 2 more months for all students who turn 5 by February 2nd. And then also he's putting funding toward this to fund 1 additional adult in every TK classroom. So that next year there will be a 12-to-1 adult to student ratio in all TK classrooms. And then under Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, look at the dollars that he's investing here, $3.4 billion. This is significant. It's very important to the governor. This was in last year's budget, and he's adding more money towards it to provide a 9-hour school day for basically before and after school program for all low-income students in TK through 6th grade. And he's adding also a component that focuses on integrating arts and music for next year. More ongoing investments related to special education, $500 million. The governor's proposing a simplified funding model, will be calculated a little differently. This one, not a lot of information on that one. We're gonna have to wait for trailer bill language to come out to see exactly how that might impact our district. And then $650 million related to child nutrition. The governor is putting money towards the cost of providing a free meal for all K-12 students, 2 free meals every day. For the last 2 years, this has been funded through the U.S. Department of Agriculture during the COVID pandemic. That is set to expire at the end of this year. So the state is now picking up the cost of those 2 free meals a day. And then also some one-time funding related to child nutrition will be provided as well. And then here's a few of the items that the governor is proposing to put one-time funding towards. $2.2 billion for school construction. The current state facility program is expected to run out of funds this year. And this one-time funds can be provided to those schools that have applications for construction projects in the system that will not be able to be funded until a new bond can go on the ballot. So we at San Marcos do have some projects in the pipeline, so it's possible this money is provided, we will benefit from some of that. $1.5 billion is being put towards developing high school career pathways through partnerships with higher ed and employers for specific fields. $500 million will be provided for high needs schools to train and hire literacy coaches. So that one, again, not sure what that eligibility requirement will be, whether that we will benefit from that program or not. We'll have to wait and see. And then $1.5 billion to purchase electric school buses and provide charging stations and infrastructure for those school buses. That one is going to school districts that are concentration grant eligible, so that we would not be getting any funds from that particular program. So that is pretty much it, the highlights of what was in his budget proposal. Our next steps will be to review guidance from the County Office of Education and School Services of California to see what pieces of the proposal we will be incorporating into our budget. We're continuing to work to develop our second interim report, which is due by March 15th. As you all know, we're continuing to work on any budget reductions of approximately $15.5 million to implement as we move into next school year. And we will absolutely just continue to monitor these state budget negotiations to incorporate into our final budget, adopted budget for 22-23 that we'll be doing in June. That's it. Do you have any questions?
Nope. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. It's hard because we don't know what that actually means for us, you know, the overall number. It's like, but what are we going to get? Which is what I really want to know, but I don't think you know that. So
yeah, we'll be working on that when the trailer bill language comes out. We'll be able to decipher exactly how many dollars may be coming to us, and we'll be able to incorporate some of that into the second interim. Other pieces we're going to have to wait until the negotiations process gets, you know, closer to June to decide if we feel comfortable putting that in our budget formally or not.
Okay, thank you so much for the update. All right, 6.4 CVRA census update. Jonathan Salt of Bacon Friedman and Full Frost LLP and Cooperative Strategies. Jonathan here?
I just let him in, so.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, there he is.
Sorry, I got cut out for a second. Good evening, members of the board, district staff, and community. I'm Jonathan Salt. I also live in the district, so this is one of my, I'm enjoying this process. I'm joined by David Lopez from Cooperative Strategies. I'm not sure if David has been entered in yet, but he and I will co-present about this important process, which is not nearly as complicated as the original transition. Let me just go ahead and share my screen and we'll start the presentation. Okay, first, can everyone see this appropriately? And David, are you in?
I let him in, so he should.
Yeah, I'm in. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, David.
Hi.
Okay, so again, I'm Jonathan Salt with F3, legal counsel for the district, Dave, demographer with Cooperative Strategies, who helped to review the map. So a little bit of background for sort of how we got in position several years ago. The California Voting Rights Act says that if you have an at-large system, which the district no longer has but used to have, and that system impairs the ability of members of protected classes from influencing the outcome of an election or electing candidates of choice, that system could violate the CVRA. And the only safe harbor from a CVRA claim is to transition, as the district did, to a by-trustee area system that we've had in place for a few years now. And that's where the district's divided into 5 roughly equal population areas, and 1 board member is elected from each area only by the voters who reside in that particular area. Just some brief history. The district started that process in 2016, and then in early 2017, held 5 public hearings and 4 community meetings, sort of drawing from scratch the current map that you have today that you've had in use for several elections. And so ultimately we arrived at the map that the board chose as the map that's been in use. Now, I emphasize this because this is nothing like what the redistricting process is for school districts. For school districts, redistricting is much simpler. It's even simpler than what cities and counties have to go through. It is as simple as this. You take your current map, you put the 2020 census data onto that map, and you see if the map is still balanced. If the map is still balanced, you make no changes and you reapprove the map. If it is no longer balanced within the acceptable range, then the demographer makes adjustments to the current map. So it's not a redraw from scratch. It is you take your map and you adjust some of the boundaries to get back to population balance. When the maps were created, there was a series of criteria. We still look at those now because we don't want to, draw a discriminatory line. For example, when you have to make an adjustment, this was the criteria used when the maps were drawn. But again, right now we're mainly focused on having the population be balanced, no more than a 10% variance to get it back into balance. And so this is the current map. It was approved several years ago. That's been in use for a while. And as Mr. Lopez will talk about, the census data has a slight impact on the current map. Not sure why that appeared again. David, you're up.
Okay, and good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Johnson and staff and those members of the audience joining us. We are the demographer working with the district and Jonathan Salt here. And I wanted to provide you some background here. Essentially, as you know, your district has grown a bit since 2010 census data. You have overall almost approximately 13,000 there, or 11% growth in the district. The variance from the 2010 and 2020 census as it relates to the trustee areas is down below. And I'll explain this table because it can be a little confusing. That first column there is when your boundaries were created for the trustee areas was based on the 2010 census data. That was the latest and greatest that anyone had. A lot of districts did it as recently as months ago using the 2010, and others are doing your process, the creation of it that you did a couple years ago now. So as Jonathan said, this is just a redistricting, and we look at the 2010 census, and using this number, the total here, 114,518, your ideal size for each trustee area back then would have been about 22,904. So that second column is a variance to that ideal number, which is 22,904. So you can see some areas, you know, when this was approved, it was about 3%, 3.5%. Variance, and that's fine. That's very low. So now you move to the next two columns, which are the 2020 census. These same trustee areas as they were drawn up have this population now, 127,314, which means your ideal size now for each trustee area population wise would be 25,463 approximately. So the variance you see in the next column is how the population from the 2020 census stacks up to the ideal of 25,463 per trustee area. And as you can see there, you know, when we're drawing new maps to kind of balance population, you can see that we're going to have to grow trustee area A and trustee area C and trustee area E a little to balance it, and we're going to have to shrink the population somehow in trustee area B and trustee area D a little. Overall, the right columns are just the demographics of it. It's the 12,796 people that were added to your district since the 2010 census. So that's where that number comes into play. But I hope that explains better that you're at a 19.5% variance in your trustee areas population-wise as they're drawn now. But we're going to propose some scenarios that bring it back in line. And as Jonathan said, should be a very pain-free process without a lot of changes that are required. So that said,
David, just to quickly clarify, so basically there just wasn't kind of even growth around the district, right? I mean, that's really what this comes down to is B and D, you know, grew faster than the other three areas.
Yes, and that's, you see that typically in a district this size, especially, you know, anywhere in Southern California where you have housing booms and busts in different places. And you know, we work with the school district in a lot of different services, and you know, there's been a lot of development happening, especially now. So come 2030 census, when we're faced with redistricting again, there's good possibility that there'll be more growth in the 2020 census. But that is correct. That's where the growth has happened. So this is just kind of a map that has your city jurisdictions overlapping, but this table to the right is literally how the folks within your boundaries responded to the 2020 census. These are the categories they chose to identify themselves with as allowed by the census. And the far right columns are only informational only. They provide those respondents that said they were 18 and older. So as you look at this, you'll see that you know, your largest minority group here is Hispanic Latino. I guess the second is Asian here based on this, how respondents replied. But generally, it's very consistent with what you see in a lot of districts your size across the state. Everybody's different, but you have 127,314 folks that responded to the census. And that's the number we divide by 5 because there's 5 trustees to figure out what the ideal population would be. An interesting thing here, if you can go back, Jonathan, this census, more than prior censuses, we found that more people responded other or 2 or more races than in prior censuses. So I'm not sure what that means long-term, but that is an interesting thing as a demographer we wanted to point out. And so this is just literally how your people in your district responded to the census. That's what this table is. This is a heat map there to the left. It's designed to show the density of your largest minority group, which is Hispanic Latino. Unfortunately, this map doesn't show you the numbers. It just shows you the density. So as you look at this, there's literally census blocks within here. You can see their shapes. Generally speaking, the larger the block is, the less people, the less development, more rural, generally speaking. And as you get down to the city areas off Mission Road or San Marcos Boulevard, all the way to the west, you'll see that they're nicely shaped squares or smaller. That's because there's a big population density there. And when you see a colored cell here, which means there's a certain density of this particular group, Hispanic Latino, chances are the population is very high in these smaller groups as opposed to something shaded into the larger group. So these are the census blocks themselves. That's the smallest group that the census provides data, and that's what we look at to balance this. And we also look at citizen voting age population estimates. This is called CVAP. So whereas we balance your trustee areas by population, and again, this is population, it's irrespective if they have kids at school, who's serving in the military, who's a senior citizen, it's purely population that we balance your trustee areas with. However, to ensure that there's no dilution of any historic minority votes, as Jonathan alluded to, we look at the CVAP data. This is a 4-year window provided by the American Community Survey. They take estimates, polling, phone calls, and they get as close as they can to the true estimate of who is voting and what their breakdown is within your census information. So you'll see that the total here is 82,587. Your total over 18 population was 96,565, and your total population was 127. So what you can glean from this is that not everybody who's in your population is either registered to vote, eligible to vote, or for some other reason just hasn't voted. So, but we do use this to ensure that there's no dilution of any of your protected classes.
And again, one of the purposes of the CVRA is to not impair the ability of a protected class from having influence in an election. And so to the extent that there is a concentration, and there is here in the center of the district, which I think is currently Area C, that area was created and it was about 50% Latino CVAP, even though district-wide it's 24. So that's a huge increase in voting power for that particular group in that area. And so as you'll see, that majority has been able to be protected through this redistricting process. So David's going to kind of walk through each of the three sort of adjusted options. Again, they look very similar to your current map. The purple lines on this map are actually the current map, and then the colors are what the proposed new lines are, but you'll see they're all pretty much based on the current one, just tweaking to get back into that population balance. David?
And to add to that, in every scenario, we're providing 3 scenarios here for your review and public review. They are as approximate as possible to your current boundaries. Kind of that if we don't have to rock the boat, let's not. And also, if you can adjust the population without without fixing what's not broken, that's the best of both worlds. And in this scenario, this had the least population variance. This is less than a 1% population variance. And we'll see a slide after this that details some data on each one. But the key highlights here is that, in the area to the west off Sycamore Avenue, south of there, we had to move some of E and expand it into A because E needed to grow and A needed to shrink. But then we also captured some at the bottom there by Rancho Santa Fe Road. Yeah, we also moved part of A into B because we needed to balance B. And there's a few little other modifications north of Craven Road there in the blue. Yep, that was formerly part of B and now it's part of D. Again, a lot of these are all done to balance the population. When you shift one thing into another, you have to keep shifting until it's balanced. And there's a few little areas where area E up there meets area D that we had to expand E into D and so forth. So this was, if you look at the next slide, this is the least variation. It's 0.6, which is almost unheard of when we do this. So, all you have to do is be under 10% though. And the good thing about this, as Jonathan alluded to, in Trustee Area C, we're able to maintain a CVAP for the Hispanic Latino population that's a majority. So I think that was one of the intents when they first drew it, and it's certainly in the intent now to maintain that if we could. That said, scenario 2, also very low. This is balanced. It's about 2.7% if I recall. We tried to address more area down there in the bottom where TAA moves into TAB, that whole area. A had to go into B. And the reason for that is because we took some of A above the 12 there that became part of C in that area. There you go. So that area down there in the little corner, that got added to C, taken from the prior area A. And then also some of D up west, Jonathan, by Sycamore Avenue again, to the west. Yeah, Trustee Area E cut into some of the formerly C area. And then again, that portion where the green meets the blue at the bottom, B and D, we added that to D. So all of this is done to balance it and keep that inner area where Trustee Area C is intact, to have a CVAP majority Hispanic with minor modifications as least as possible in an effort to balance the rest of the trustee areas. And then finally we did, oh, I'm sorry. And this is the breakdown. Again, total population is the column that you want to ensure is compared to the ideal up there at the very top. And then the CVAP is what we use to make sure there's no dilution of any historic minority groups as they were previously or are now. Scenario 3, we took a little bit of different approach. We were able to expand some things differently. This has the highest variation. I think it was 8.8%, but it gave you a different look because to the far west of the district near Sycamore, we extended area C, and subsequently we had to adjust again some of E into D to capture that where Jonathan was. And then we kept down there where A and B is. A merged into B in that area there to capture population, and a few little minor modifications. But this change to us was more major than some of the other changes to give you a different look. You know, maybe one of the concerns is that, hey, my area is growing, or the public says there's going to be a lot of development here, so it's okay to do that. It's okay to do this. However the look is and what works best for your district, we wanted to give you another option. And when you turn to the data slide, here's where I said 8.8% variance. It's still within reason. It's still balanced. And then again, in Trustee Area C, we maintain the Hispanic Latino CVAP majority. So that said, I just want to talk a little bit about the draft timeline. We're here on the 18th. Based on your input, the community's input, and it doesn't have to be in this particular meeting. I know there's some time to mull over, and staff and council can convey to us some suggestions. Maybe what you can do now is say, well, you know, we'll spend the week and we'll rule out what scenarios we don't like. Maybe we want a modification of number 2 or number 1, but we like it, but we want to see if you can do a little modifications here. That's what this time is for now, leading up to the February 15th board meeting, where we'll have any revised scenarios or additional scenarios that you wanted. And the hope there is that the board can select a map and adopt it. The deadline for this, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, it's February 28th that redistricting has to be completed in California for school districts. And the idea here is that in March or so, we can package everything up, work with your council, and submit what we need to the county registrar of voters.
And just to again recap, I know this seems like, oh my gosh, we have to do this entire thing in a month, but you know, as we mentioned, this is not a complicated process, especially for school districts. And as you saw on the maps, it's really just adjusting your current map boundaries to regain that population balance and really not split up protected class concentration. So any map that gets picked, whether it's these 3 or if there's any suggestions for something different, are all going to look pretty similar to your current map. So it's not a redraw from scratch. You went through, you know, a very rigorous public process, 4 or 5 years ago that had, I think, 9 opportunities for people to be in person and talk about the maps, suggest changes, etc. That's done. It's been vetted. This is your map, and now this is just about getting it into balance, just like it was a few years ago. So I think. With that, we're happy to answer questions from the board. We're happy to stick around into the public hearing as a couple items later. And if you'd like, we can either answer board questions then or potentially respond to some comments if there are any from the public, just so that we can clarify this process. Because again, not a redraw, just adjusting what you have, which is pretty close to balanced anyway.
Okay, any questions from the board? My only question is just, it seems like it is a pretty compressed timeline. And I know some of that was just because the census data took so long to get in. And so, but there's not a ton of time for public input. And so I believe we have a website available, or we have a website or something so that the public has time, if they aren't going to make tonight's meeting, to provide input. And I just want to make sure that the public is very much aware of the fact that they have the opportunity to provide input prior to us voting on this next month.
Yes, all three map options that was presented tonight have been up on our website for about a week. There's a public hearing tonight, as well as an opportunity for them to submit an email board as well, all throughout this next month.
And it's important to remember that these maps don't change where anybody goes to school. It doesn't change how the board's governed. It really only impacts who can be a candidate for board, when, and who elects them.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We will see you in a few minutes for the public hearing. Okay, 7.0 report by superintendent.
There we go. Thank you. Good evening, board members. I know we've been at it now for a couple of hours, so I wish I could say I'll be brief, but I do have a couple of things I do need to walk the board through. So thank you for the opportunity. I always want to begin every presentation with our students because they are why we're here. Students at the beginning and students at the end. So it was very nice to welcome our students back to school last week after a 3-week break. I saw lots of smiling parents sending their kids back into class. And it was great to see our kids back in class and learning and very engaged, and they were rested up and ready to go. So that was really exciting. The not so exciting part, of course, as we're all aware, is that we have had a surge of COVID cases, as all school districts in, well, around the country really, but particularly here in California, have been experiencing. I did want to say that we had a very successful testing program running the week before we got back. That's the Monday, the 3rd through the 8th. That was Saturday. We administered just shy of 2,800 tests to our students and staff. That was really, really good. And then this last week, when the first week of students being back, another 2,500. And then again, this past weekend. I just want to thank our staff and our testing company for a really smooth process. I was out and about in the district. I saw the lines at Cal State San Marcos. I saw the lines over at Kaiser. They were around the block, out the parking lot and up the street, and it was really bad. I visited all of our testing sites here in the district multiple times, and I never saw a line that was longer than about 15 people. And I was getting good reports from the people who were coming to get tested. So that was very, very pleasing to hear. And then we did get the at-home testing kits from the state. They were late in coming, but we did get them into students' hands last Thursday. As you know, we have experienced some staffing shortages. And just as a one data point, that first Monday that we came back, we had 139 staff members out. That was teachers, support staff, and administrators at school sites, in some of our departments, and at the district office. So everybody has been shorthanded. That number got a little higher throughout the week, but I want to commend our HR team. They were also they are shorthanded through last week and the week before students came back, and they did a really, really great job filling as many of the positions as they could. We have had unfilled positions, but there's been a lot of very, very strong teamwork at our school sites. Our district office staff has been deployed out to school sites to help cover unfilled positions and support our administrative team out there on the school site. So I want to thank our team for doing everything they can to keep our schools open and functioning. We also did, you're aware that the governor signed an executive order last week providing flexibility for school districts in their hiring of substitute teachers. So our HR team right now is working on that and working on seeing if we can get some of our student teachers and others a process to help fill some of these positions. There were a number of other things, knowing that this was coming up. Of course, the surge happened while we were on break. It was a little unexpected, but when we were back, most of the district administrators come back, or the district office anyway, comes back a week before students. So we did put a couple of other things in place. We have asked our staff here in San Marcos, regardless of their vaccination status, whether they're indoors and outdoors, we've asked them to make every reasonable effort to try to maintain 6 feet of distance from other people. That's not a rule that's coming down from the state, but we deemed that a prudent measure to take at this time, really, again, just to keep people as healthy as we can. We've also gone to virtual meetings for the time being. I had some questions from some parents. Oh no, we heard that the district is going to virtual meetings, and we think this is just the first step in closing down, and that is not the case. Again, we're just trying to keep our staff healthy and coming to work so we can keep our schools functioning. And then also we did ask our staff, recognizing this is going to be really hard to do in a classroom environment, just do your very best. If you can try to limit contact that exceeds 15 minutes so that they don't get identified as close contacts. We are aware that there is actually an order from the state on indoor masking for the time being. So that's whether we go to the supermarket or whether we're in school. So that is in place as well. And I did want to mention that it is important to remember that for the 2021-22 school year, districts really don't have the option of pivoting back to virtual instruction like we did last year. The legislation, the emergency legislation that was put in place last year when the pandemic started, sunset last June. So we don't have that option this year. So I just want to reassure any family members who may be with us this evening that that is not in our plans. So we will continue to monitor our staffing situation. We've got our district team talking to our school sites and visiting our school sites and walking the halls every day. And we're going to make sure that our students and staff are safe. And really, if there's any time when we might need to close an individual classroom for a period of time, it would only be because we just can't maintain the safety. But for now, things are holding together, and we're hoping to get through this surge. I don't want to talk about this without mentioning that we do have a website, a link on our website to our HR department. So anybody who may be interested, we put this out on a number of venues and in our social media and other things. So I wanted to make sure that anybody who might be interested, that you're looking at our HR website for that. I want to mention one other thing about COVID, and that is that by this time, we're all familiar with the decision tree. And I want to thank our staff. And just talk about this for just a half a second. I want to thank our staff for their incredible diligence in monitoring and managing all the changes. And I want to thank our families for their patience. We're aware of the decision tree. If you've ever spent some time looking at it, you know how complex and detailed it is. Last year, we had a 1-page decision tree. This year, it's 4 pages long. And so that already increases the complexity tremendously. And I don't know how many people are aware of this, but between Friday, January 7th and Friday, January 14th, in that 8-day period, there were 11 changes to this decision tree from the San Diego Public Health. Some of those changes came from the end of one day to the morning of the next. What I mean by that is, well, I just put it this way. Every time a change to the decision tree comes, our team down here at the district office has to stop what they're doing, gather together, they call a meeting, go through the decision tree. Do we understand the changes? Are we clear on where it's been adjusted? And then they have to figure out, okay, what procedure changes do we need to get communicated out to our school sites? They rework our communications that go out to families, and that takes some time, and we have to get it just right. There have been at least 2 occasions in the last week where that whole process I'm describing happened at the end of a day. We went home, came in the next morning, opened the email, and there was another change. So if you look up here, I kind of circled this little part up here at the top corner. They are now sending us the decision trees, not only with the date of the change, but with a timestamp, because they're changing so rapidly. I say all this because sometimes some of our families will express a little bit of frustration, very understandably. I went to the school site, I was asking these questions. The person behind the desk was having a hard time answering me accurately. Or I came here 3 days ago and you told me something different. Or my elementary student got this answer, and my middle school student I was at the other school and I'm not getting the same answer. This is really, really, really hard for us to track. So if there's any confusion out there, our team is doing a phenomenal job, but some of that has to do with these changes that are coming fast and furious. I also want to talk just for 1/2 second about contact tracing. Because of the surge in cases that everybody in the state is experiencing, It is simply becoming too difficult to do the traditional contact tracing for every single case that is coming through. So the CDPH has now allowed school districts to shift to group tracing, which is what we have done. Group tracing, without going into too much detail, requires us to basically notify all the families if there was a positive COVID case in the classroom. So in an elementary school, any class of students where there was a positive case, that whole class will be notified. Parents are recommended to test on day 3, 4, or 5 and monitor the symptoms. Let us know if their student exhibits any symptoms or if they come down with the illness. And if it's in the middle school or the high school, then any positive student, all the students in the classes throughout the day of that positive student case will be notified. School districts are not required or responsible for tracking all those test results, but it is something that we recommend to our parents. Okay, with that, let me shift a little bit to the budget update. So Aaron just shared what we're hearing from the governor's office. It's important to remember that the governor's proposal is that it's a proposal. And so we have to wait and see how the legislature eventually adopts their budget and what ends up in there. And there are some important points here that I just want to reiterate. I know we talked about this a little bit last month, and Aaron just mentioned some of these things again. The board directed staff last month at our first interim to find $15.5 million in budget reductions. And there are two main factors that are contributing to the budget pressures that we're feeling. Number one is the loss of 1,200 students. If we consider that every 100 students is roughly $1 million to our budget, that's $12 million right there. And so there is right sizing needed to align to our current enrollment. I'm going to say something about that in just a second. The second main factor that's contributing to our budget pressures is the Lcf funding model itself. As I mentioned in my presentation last month, it is disadvantageous for our district compared to some of our neighboring districts. We don't receive concentration money and we're not a basic aid district. Those are the two. There are 3 kinds of school districts in the state. School districts that receive concentration money, school districts that are basic aid tend to have higher funding levels than school districts like ours. And so there's right sizing needed so that our expenditures align to the lower levels of funding that we receive through LCFF. So I wanted to say, it looks like there is more money coming next year, if based on what the governor's budget proposal is showing. And that's great. And we'll take every one of those dollars. It's important to know that we're going to be funded on 1,200 students, 1,200 fewer students. So no matter what money comes in, it's coming in for fewer students. We can't continue to operate like we have 21,000 students when we only have, well, now it's 19,700, 19,800. We can't continue to operate and continue to fund all the staffing and all the programs that we had when we had more students. So regardless of the fact that there's money coming in, there still will be right sizing that is needed. So that's important. Last month, the board adopted a set of guiding principles that direct staff in how to approach these reductions. And I just want to highlight them very quickly. First, maintaining compliance with local, state, and federal regulations. We're not going to break the law and we're not going to create potential for financial penalties. Second, maintain compliance with our collective bargaining agreements with SMEA and CSEA. Always consider non-staffing reductions before staffing reductions. We are doing that currently. We always want to start with things that don't involve people. I will say that when you're looking at a reduction of $15.5 million in a district where 86% of your operating budget, 86% of your expenditures is on people, is on staff, which is very, very normal for school districts, it's going to be impossible for us to reach that number of reductions without layoffs of some kind. When we're looking at vacancies, if there's a vacancy, we always want to evaluate the feasibility of not filling that position. That would enable us to close a position without affecting an actual person. We are considering reorganization of positions and functions for increased efficiencies. And then we can always look at funding sources with our unrestricted funds, our restricted funds, and see if we may be able to shift expenditures here and there just to make sure we're making the most of every dollar. So those are some pieces that we are working on, and then always continuing to work towards board goals and our LCAP, because our kids deserve a good quality education, no matter what kind of issues we may be facing with our budgets. So our staff is working right now on identifying the core programs and staffing that are right-sized and sustainable, given the state funding model and given our enrollment. I think that's a really important concept to remember. We don't want to be on a yo-yo, on a merry-go-round, trying to spend and then reduce and then spend and reduce. We want to find out where is our sweet spot. How do we right-size our staffing and our programs so that what we can commit to in the long term. Also, I receive questions sometimes about our COVID relief funds. Well, you guys have received X millions of dollars on COVID relief funds. Doesn't that solve your problem? The COVID relief funds do not solve our problem. They've been spent on staff, other mitigation efforts like PPE, like the air filtration systems we have in classrooms to keep students and staff safe. It's really important to recognize that COVID relief funds are one-time funds and they're all restricted. So we can't use COVID relief money to throw it into the general fund and pay for ongoing expenses. And then Erin just shared her highlights for the governor's budget proposal. And then we do have a demographic study that is showing that will show enrollment projections for the next 7 years. We'll bring that to the board in February to see, is this decline in enrollment a blip on the radar? Is it a one-time thing we have to deal with, or are we looking at a longer term situation here? And then I just finally want to highlight something we talked about last month, which I know is a frustration for the board and for all of us, which is while the governor and the legislature are negotiating the budget, the state budget for next year and trying to figure out how they want to allocate money to us, we're under another timeline on the ed code. We have to make staffing decisions on or before March 15th. That used to be only for certificated staff. Now there is a new law has been passed that also now applies to classified staff. So we have to make staffing decisions for next year on or before March 15th, before we actually know how the budget is all going to settle out, which is a very, it's a flaw in the system that we have to live with. It's very difficult. Nobody likes it, but I just want to call it out that that's a constraint that we're under. Okay, as important as those things are, and they are very important, and as much time and energy and effort as the COVID relief and the COVID managing COVID takes and the budget, it's important for us always to remember that we can't let those things distract from our core work and our core mission, which is serving students. So I'm very, very excited to highlight the fact that our graduate profile work has begun. We had our first meeting last week, where we began to look at how the world is changing. What are some of the landscape shifts that our kids are going to be experiencing now and will be experiencing as they leave us after graduation? So it was very exciting. I have never been in a meeting quite like this, to be honest with you. We pulled together 83 people, and they're all listed out there on the left side of your screen. They all came together. I've never been in a meeting that had as broad and diverse representation and so much passion all around how our students are doing and how we can support them to be successful in the future. It was an amazing meeting. It was about 2.5 hours. We started after the workday. We started at 5:30. We didn't end up till 8 o'clock, and it was full engagement the entire time. It was really exciting to have all the teachers, administrators, the board was there, all the people you see there. I'm very, very, very thankful and very encouraged. It's important to remember that we have, we've brought all these people together. These are all San Marcos people, because the graduate profile that we are creating is a San Marcos graduate profile. As I mentioned before, there are a handful of districts that are starting to do this work. We could very easily just take one off the shelf or pull one off the internet and just slap on a poster and send it out. But that's not the way we want to do this work. We want to own this work. We want to make sure that it's applicable to our students in our community. So we are developing this profile for our San Marcos students. I do want to highlight the last bullet point on that list of our people were the highlight of the show. No question about it. Our students are amazing. You hear them, you hear our board reps every month. They're awesome. I was able to sit in the breakout group last Wednesday evening with our students, and I sit and I listen and I'm amazed. And I closed that meeting. My closing comments were, every time I listen to our students, and I mean this absolutely 100% from the bottom of my heart, honestly, every time I listen to our students, I have a little more hope for the future. Because at my age, sometimes you read the newspaper and you start to become one of those grumpy people. It's all going to you know where. But no, our kids are so thoughtful and they are so articulate and they're just so inspiring. So they definitely were the star of the show, and we're very, very happy to have them as part of this process. Our next meeting, there will be 4 meetings to develop the profile. Our next meeting we will begin to discuss what competencies do our young people need here in San Marcos to address some of the challenges that we identified in our design team meeting number 1. So Each meeting will build on itself, and we're very excited to get that done. It'll be 4 meetings. By that time, we should have our profile finished. And then from there, we'll move on to a strategic plan when we can start to look at, given the funding we've got, given the kind of student we want to produce in our district, what do the next 3 to 5 years look like? And how do we start bringing that to life, not only for some students, but for all San Marcos students. So that'll be very, very exciting. With that, I will conclude and entertain any questions that the board has. I had a little moment of panic there that I was going to minimize my screen and find that I had been on mute for the past 5 minutes. I wasn't, so that's good.
No, thank you. And yes, our students were the best thing about that meeting. They're amazing. And I think we really want to try to find a way to hear from our students more. They really should be leading this. So anyway.
Yeah, I have a superintendent student advisory group that I'm launching next week. Next week is our first meeting. We've been planning this for a number of months. I'm super excited about that too. I'll tap them as well and see how we might engage their voices more in this process.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Report by board members. Does anyone have anything they would like to report? Nope. Okay. All right. So then let's move on to, sorry, I'm toggling back and forth between multiple screens with my script and watching you guys. So I keep losing my place. I apologize. Here we are. We are on for action. Item 9.1, public hearing, impact of the 2020 census data on trustee area map population balance. Review proposed adjusted map options. Erin, it says you are going to introduce this.
Oh, I don't have anything more to say than what has already been presented, but I don't know, Dana, did we have a speaker on this one? I thought perhaps we did.
We did, but I'm trying to find him.
Okay.
Bob Crane. Let me see. Oh, here, maybe I believe this might be him. So
I think I have to open the hearing.
yes, do that,
Okay.
please.
Okay, so this public hearing is now open. Dana, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Yes, we have one speaker.
Okay.
Mr. Crane, are you
Hi.
there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So apparently I clicked the wrong link regarding this, but I wanted to speak at the earlier session. Can I have an opportunity to speak what I was going to talk about at the earlier session?
Yes, sure.
Okay, great. So first off, I would like to thank all the district teachers, staff, and administrators. I fully understand how hard these last few years have been, as I actually have a wife who works for the district. You've all risen to this challenge, and I'd like to commend you all. The board members and Superintendent Johnson, the topic I'd like to discuss today is perceived discrimination that is happening regarding vaccination status for students and staff. Why do students and staff believe they are being discriminated against? Because even though vaccinated and unvaccinated can both catch and transmit COVID, this district only requires those who have not been vaccinated to get weekly testing. It should be noted that more than 146 large studies from all over the world have shown that unvaccinated people who have caught COVID and previously recovered from COVID have shown up to 25 times the immunity as someone who is vaccinated, and yet this subgroup of unvaccinated is still required to go through the same weekly testing that someone who is unvaccinated is. Anyway, anyone who is listening should currently be aware that the vaccines currently do not keep people from getting COVID, nor stop them from spreading the virus. But the question is how ineffective they really are. If you're not aware, the state of California, along with nearly every other state in the United States, tracks and the reported COVID infections by vaccinated vaccine status. Since May of 2021, the CDC has, although decided to stop reporting this data, but many states still have databases that register this info. For example, New York State has over 800,000 vaccinated people that have caught and transmitted COVID. Here in California, you guys may not know this, but that is over 617,000 people. In fact, since December the 18th of 2021, with this new wave, the vaccinated and unvaccinated numbers are almost identical.
You have 15 seconds.
This is why I'm calling for two things to happen. One of two things that can happen. If you truly believe there should be testing, then test everyone. If you don't believe that the vaccinated should be tested, then neither should the unvaccinated.
Your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm flying by the seat of my pants here, and because we're doing it virtually and it's been a while, I wanted to make sure that he had an opportunity to speak. However, I'm concerned that I might have messed something up with this public hearing. Jonathan, should I restart the public hearing?
No, I think if there's anybody out there who wants to comment about the proposed maps, you know, maybe kind of toss that out there for someone to raise their hand or something like that. But no, I mean, it doesn't take away from, you know, the item.
I just didn't want to have to come back and hold another meeting and do it again because I messed that up. Okay.
And actually, an important note, there is no requirement to even have a public hearing about redistricting for school district redistricting. So again, you know, I know we had so many of these years ago. So this is sort of an extra thing that most districts are doing it, but it's just a way to get feedback before you make a big decision.
Yeah, we want to make sure people have the opportunity to speak to it if they want to. Okay, so are there any other speakers, Dana?
No, they're not.
All right, then this public hearing is now closed. And we will be bringing this back to vote in February. So that is the end of our action. Let's move on to 10.0 consent. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for discussion purposes?
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, moved by Jamie and seconded by Carlos to approve the consent agenda for discussion purposes. Is there any discussion?
I do. I just a question. I didn't get did 10.3, is that still on there, the virtual meeting for February?
Yes. So the virtual, so basically we don't have to be virtual in February. It just gives the option if we need to.
Okay.
That we can be virtual and we won't have to hold a special meeting to vote to go virtual in February.
Okay. So if we approve this today, then we still have the option of being in person in February.
Yes.
Okay.
Ideally, if everything, you know, if it dies down enough to where it seems like, you know, we can do it in person, then I think we all want to do it in person.
Exactly. Yeah. I just want to make sure we weren't like, you know, putting ourselves in a corner of having a virtual meeting if we could have an in-person one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, so what factors will you use to determine that?
I think it's probably going to be the caseload if it seems countywide and even district-wide. I think most people are doing virtual meetings right now just because we can be virtual. And I think part of the reason why we went virtual this time was not, you know, if our goal is to make sure that we're doing everything that we can do to be safe so that schools can be open, if we don't need to expose our staff and everybody to a room full of people, you know, that's just one extra thing to keep everybody safe so that we can keep our schools open. And so, you know, if it seems like a surge has died down before February, then we'll be in person.
So we'll be looking at our local numbers and then county numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I think our staff will advise on that, right?
Yeah, I
Andy?
think, yes, I think the most important thing is we're so shorthanded right now. All of us on the district office are on call to hop out there and provide support if we need to. And there's a lot of staff who has to come to the board meetings. So it was my recommendation to President Carlson that if she would consider doing this one virtual, just so we can all stay safe and healthy. I'll be in the morning. I got my phone on every day. Do you need me to go out and teach AP calculus or something? So hasn't come to that yet, but we're trying to keep ourselves in a position to be able to support our schools.
Right. Yeah. If everybody's in a meeting and we find out later someone has it, then everybody has to quarantine and our staff isn't available to go do something else. And so, yeah. Okay. So that was moved by Jamie and seconded by Carlos. Student board representatives, please say your vote.
Aye.
All right. Board members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. All right, 11.1 information, proposed new high school courses.
Hi, everyone. That's me. I'm going to share my screen.
All right.
Okay. We have 4 courses that I'm going to introduce today, but because we have new board members, I did just want to take just a minute for you to see what our process is with when we bring proposed courses to the board. So the road to new courses, they are introduced by a teacher or an administrator to members of the district's subject area councils. At the secondary level, team leaders from each school come together for each individual subject area, and that's considered our subject area council. Once the course is approved by the subject area council, it's reviewed by the secondary curriculum council. The secondary curriculum council are our secondary administrators, made up of secondary administrators from each site. Once it is approved by the secondary curriculum council, the courses are then brought to Ed Services. They review them for various factors. And once they're reviewed by Ed Services, they're brought to the board. Some of the main considerations that we look at has to meet A3g requirements. There was a time when courses would be brought to the board that did not necessarily meet A3g requirements. That is no longer the case. If a course is coming to you, it will meet A3g requirements. Also, it should have clear connections to standards, to a particular pathway, CTE pathway, or to an existing program. And it is important to note that board approval will not guarantee that a class is implemented at the school. However, it does allow a class to be implemented if all of the other factors are in place. If there is a staff member to teach it, if there are students who want to take it, if materials are available. So all of those things are in consideration for the course to actually be implemented at the school site. A through G, we throw it around a lot. Just a reminder of what A through G the A3g requirements are. These are minimum requirements for students to take in high school in order to be eligible to enter either Cal State or UC. So as you can see, those triangles in black are the minimum requirements. The light gray, those are recommended courses that are taken. So 2 years of history, 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 2 years of a lab science, 2 years of a foreign language, 1 year of a VAPA, and 1 year of a college prep elective, A through G. So when we say a course is pending A, that means it's pending that it will meet the requirement for history. And it is pending because every course has to be submitted to the University of California in order to receive approval. So 4 courses that we are introducing. The first is Ag Physics. It is from the Science Department. It is pending a D, Lab Science for UCCSU. Grade level 9 through 12 can take it. Typically, it would be probably an 11th grader, but ultimately 9 through 12 can take it. This is a standards-based lab science. It fulfills our physical science grad requirement, the UC Lab Science requirement. It is connected to our Ag CTE pathway. It is the third course in the sequence. We already have approved and already offer Ag Bio and Ag Chem. In Ag Physics, it really is the fundamental concepts of physics with the lens of agriculture over it. So kids look at physics within agriculture, within our natural resources, and through the use of technology related to agriculture. The second course that we are bringing forward is the future of esports marketing, English 11 and marketing is the official title, English 11 and marketing. This is an ELA course. It is a UC CSU pending B. It is for 11th graders. Similar to our Ag Physics course, it is connected to a pathway. It is a standards-based English 11 course focused on English language, written and oral communication skills, and the mechanics of writing. It connects to the esports industry. We already have and have implemented ELA 9, which is game design. ELA 10 is entrepreneurship, and this one is all about marketing. So you have designed your game and written your game. You've decided that you want to sell your game to someone. And now it's, how do I market my game? And what are those skills that I need? What are the communication skills that I need? All of that is done within the course of English. Next up is video production. It is a VAPA of visual and performing arts. It is a pending G college prep elective. It is the second course in the CTE pathway, and it extends beyond the filming of video products, which is basically video production 1, and really moves into a more in-depth understanding of other areas, which includes talent or acting, directing, camera work, screenwriting, and editing. That is open to grades 10 through 12. And the last course is Pre-AP World History. It is a social science. It is a pending G college prep elective. Its target audience is grade 9, and it is a focus on the skills that are fundamental to the study of history and geography, with a focus on those skills that are necessary for being successful in advanced and AP courses. The skills include evaluating evidence, explaining historical and geographical relationships, and incorporating evidence, typically within an argument. So our new courses will return to the board for approval in February. Thank you for your attention, and I am happy to take your questions.
So I have a few questions. I'm really excited to see our course offering expanding, especially leaning into 21st century skills and also the interests of our students, and making sure they're aligned to the A through G, and then also UC and CSU. Not a few years ago, about a year ago, we came together and we adopted a board resolution, just looking at diversity, equity, inclusion. Where are we as a district in piloting, launching, investigating, looking at staffing, materials with ethnic studies?
I can give you a little bit of history on that. So the law was introduced for ethnic studies to be a required course. So the class of 2030, which is our current 4th graders, will have a graduation requirement of ethnic studies. Prior to that, in the school year 25-26, we are required to offer at least one ethnic studies course. So we are on track for that. The state actually has kind of a 4-step process to go through as you introduce your ethnic studies course. So they want you to first develop a clear funding model for it. Second, they want you to identify teachers and who are committed to the investment in ethnic studies and committed to teach it. Third is we are supposed to consult with other districts, and fourth, we are supposed to have a strategic plan. So currently in place, our funding model, we have our educator effectiveness grant, and we have written into our effectiveness grant the funding for developing our ethnic studies course. So check for step 1. Step 2, we have identified teachers. We currently have teachers from both our social studies and our English department working on developing the ethnic studies course. Third, consulting with other districts. We have reached out to our surrounding districts who are either in the process, they're a little bit ahead of us. We've talked with Poway, we've talked with a couple of other districts who are in process. They have implemented through their ELA courses, and some do it through history. We are planning, we are still on the decision track of where we will put it in. One district has made it a 9th grade required course that has taken the place of their English course. That's something that we're looking at. We'll see. And so we have several models that we are looking at. Next year, we will have the committee get together to review all of these courses that we are kind of gathering in this year to make a decision on where we will implement the course. We also will be doing a curriculum audit of our current courses, our current social studies and English courses, to make some decisions there to see where we need to shift. Is it possible that we can shift an English course into an ethnic studies course? So that will be the work of the committee for next year, with the goal to bring a course to the board at the end of next year. And then that will allow us to pilot in the 2024-25 school year and implement with our required 25-26 school year. I talked fast, I apologize.
No, that was, thank you. I've been asking about that for a while. So only because I know that districts in San Diego have begun that journey, and you mentioned Poway as one of them. And so you mentioned the committee. When will parents have the opportunity to provide input and ask questions? Will it be 2 years from now, a year from now? I mean, what are we looking at getting input from the community?
Next year. So we have a committee right now that is formed. We also are doing work, we're doing equity work. The district committee is doing equity work with the San Diego County Office of Ed this year. Actually, this month they start some training. Next month we continue we continue that training with our school sites, and we will add on the next layer, which will be community input. So that will be all starting next year.
And will there be work with parents in that area of what staff are getting trained in? Is that
yes? Yes, part of our work with the county this year, the district committee is at the end of this year, at the end of this school year, is to develop a strategic plan on how we make a sustainable move to greater equity within our community. So that will be part of that strategic plan that the district group will do. And part of that will be, how do we get input from our community? How do we really listen to our student voice, and how do we get greater student voice? So what our goal really is to be able to have a sustainable depth of equity work, and not I will say a response, something that is not simply reactive, but really something that is proactive, fits our needs as a district, fits our needs for our students, and really connects to what we are doing with our strategic plan, with our graduate profile. We want everything kind of working together.
Great. Well, I really appreciate the work you're doing with this rollout. And I know it's a compliance with the state, but I really want it to be a commitment from our community and have them understand why we're doing this and what it is and what it's not. And also having voice from K-12, because we say they're in 4th grade right now, but so much of what this rollout will mean is going to impact our future generations. And making sure that not only there's that student voice, but also parent voice. So and educating them on what it is and what it's not, because if we don't get ahead in front of it, it's what they hear on media or social media, and oftentimes it's not the correct information, or there's a little bit of truth, but it's distorted. So thank you. I'm excited about this work, and hopefully we can a couple times a year get an update as a board so we know what's happening. So you're keeping busy with that. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? All right.
I keep turning off my camera because I don't know about you. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. It's not made up. And Zoom thing is,
we've been at it since 5 o'clock. So
I'd rather meet face to face. So I miss all you guys. I'm missing all the people in the audience too. So.
All right. So that actually, I think, is probably a great segue into our discussion, COVID mitigation strategies. Basically, I just kind of wanted to have an opportunity for the board really to discuss all of the COVID stuff that's going on and the changes. And I think Andy did a great job with your updates and being very gracious about all of the changes and everything that's happened. I personally am pretty fed up with a lot of it. And so I think that we've had multiple requests for items on the agenda, or people want to know what we think and what's going on. And I felt like this was probably just a good time to kind of talk about in general what the board direction is for the district with COVID ongoing currently, and as it kind of moves into an endemic situation. So if anybody has anything in particular that they want to talk about, throw it out there. Otherwise, I have a little list of things that I thought were relevant that it would be nice to hear from you all on. You just want me to read my list? Okay, cool. Masks, tests, mandates, quarantine protocol, and subs. I can't read my writing on this one. I'll go back to that. Just the ongoing endemic. Personally, I feel like the biggest thing that I kind of want to have come out of this is that I don't really feel like this is going away, at least anytime soon. I think that we have I think we have a strategy. I think we have a plan, and I feel like we've articulated that plan, but I want to make sure that everybody actually does understand what the plan is. And it does. The COVID conversation feels like it's just sucked up all of the oxygen in the room, and that's all that we talk about all the time now. And I personally really desperately want to move on and do other things and have better conversations like, instruction and like these classes and the student profile and what we're going to be doing moving forward. And so I feel like it would be great to just make sure that we're all on the same page with what COVID is, so that we don't need to keep on talking about it. And as things change, and they're going to, staff knows what they're doing, and it doesn't need to keep coming back to us, so that we can move forward on things. I just see nodding heads. Okay.
I think on a lot of things that are relevant. I think based on the circumstances and based on the information that we're given, our leadership and our teachers and our staff are rallying together to keep our schools open. We're required to keep them open, but it's not out of compliance, it's out of commitment. And so I feel we're revisiting it on a regular basis is important, but right now I don't want it to be the main attraction, right? It's not the Top Gun, Tom Cruise movie. it's, you know, and I don't want it to be the full feature, but it's something that we're having to address as a board. And but like I said, it's not the main attraction. I could come up with a better analogy, but that's the one I'm going to stick with right now. So it's not even a preview or a coming attraction, right? I see Tiffany smiling, so thank you for.
Okay, so in terms of testing, we had a lot of conversation about testing because that was something that came up while we were in the middle of break. You know, and the governor, you know, said, oh, we're going to send these tests. And suddenly then once he said that, our community expected it. And it's like, why didn't this happen? And what is this about? I feel like we did have a plan prior to break, which was we are doing testing. We're doing testing at our school sites, and anybody who wants those tests can come to the school site and get them. It's a better test. It's not the at-home test. It's actually a much more accurate test. And I feel like there was a good response in the community to that. Moving forward, when we have breaks, do we want to have tests that we send home with students, or do we want to have, do we want to just continue with what we're currently doing, which is, hey, if you want to test, come to the district and here are our sites and they're available to you and you can do that. Is it even feasible? And staff, I think, can weigh in on this. Is it feasible to really say every time we have a break, we're going to make sure that we've got a test to send home for every single person in the district? And so I feel like those are kind of the things that it would be nice to get those things kind of nailed down now, so that as they continue to happen, and they will continue to happen, we don't need to keep feeling like we're behind the ball on this. Everybody already knows what we're doing, and that's what it is. So does anyone have any strong opinions on that, or do we just want to let Andy handle it?
I mean, I'm all for letting Andy handle it, and but I would say that I'm not totally sold on like sending a test home with every child for every break that we may have. But I would like our district testing sites to be available like they were right now. And really, if someone needs a test, if they feel that they've been exposed, if they're having the symptoms, go out and get tested. But I don't know how feasible it is to send out a test for every kid for every break.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the measures that we've put in place either because they're mandated or because they're best practice. And right now, so much is emerging about best practice is why we as a team have not jumped immediately on everything you see. I mean, I watch my news too. You know, you open your news in the morning and there's some new great mask, for example, that's going to be great. And then there's a big buzz about, well, why don't we have those? And then 3 days later, someone else comes out and goes, yeah, no, that was a faulty study or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we're monitoring all that stuff, but our risk managers, our risk management staff, which is how many people are in risk management right now? They're sick, but we do have a very small risk management staff who is following. They're not reading the news to make these decisions, right? They're following OSHA and the other agencies that give the actual real guidance on these things.
Yeah, I really appreciate us as an organization coming together and doing the testing and a little bit more accurate, and then offering, if parents want the home kit, there'll be a link. So if they can be sent home rather than just giving them to the kids. Many districts make the parent come bring them, but you know, if the parent knows or is expecting it, then they know that it's coming and they request it, versus just handing them out to anyone that wants just because they're a student. So I think we should continue providing testing as we have been, and then offering kits to those who want them. One thing I have shared is the masks for our staff. I'm not gung-ho right now in giving masks to kids unless parents would want them, but recently the governor said he's going to be, providing masks. So when is that going to happen, if it's going to happen? So that's especially with this current strain variant.
Personally, I think everything that our district has done to keep our schools open has been incredible. And I know obviously it's no small feat. I am not, in my opinion, I am not a health professional. And so moving forward with health professionals' opinion on how to keep our staff and our students safe, that's their job. Our job is to ensure that we are giving the best education to our students in a healthy environment for their students and for our teachers. And so for me, my personal opinions on masks and vaccines isn't really appropriate. What's appropriate, because I'm not a health professional, is what the health professionals, is what the health departments tell us what we need to do in order to achieve the highest level for our kids, which is keeping our schools open. And all the facets that go along with keeping our schools open and keeping our education going and keeping our teachers happy and keeping our students happy. And so that's, for me, that's what I'm going to focus on, because that's what I got elected to do. And I'm going to trust that our health department and that our district is analyzing and doing everything they need to do to ensure that the kids have a place to come to school to, and it's a safe place. And I personally think the district testing is awesome, just because there's so much control, and the person who's getting the test is getting the results of the test. You know, it's just a great place for everyone to go, parents, students, to go get a test. And you're right, the lines everywhere else are outrageous. So I'm very thankful for myself and my daughter that the district has provided that opportunity.
Am I allowed to add on here? Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, yes, absolutely. I was actually just getting ready to say, hey, what do our students think about our mitigation strategies and kind of what you're seeing on your campuses in terms of what your daily life is like, having to wear a mask every single day and being in school versus being virtual. And is there anything that you feel we need to know in order to make better decisions for you guys?
Yeah, well, first of all, I do think that testing, making it as convenient and fast as possible is important, because there are students who are missing a lot of school just because they're waiting to get a test or waiting on a test result. And so there's like classrooms that are entirely empty because it's full of students who might be showing some very mild symptoms, or they were exposed and they're just waiting for a test result. And there's just a lot of absences that are almost exclusively because of that, not directly because they were sick with COVID. And also, just students find masks and quarantining very uncomfortable and annoying, but I do think that that's probably the best way to go about this. It's just, it sucks, but we got to do it, you know?
Thank you for that.
So Ren, I just want to follow up with you. So is it more convenient for us to have more hours at our testing locations or send home tests with the students?
I'm going to be honest, the majority of students don't even know that the testing locations are a thing. I try to tell as many people that, like, hey, you could go here. It sounds like it's a pretty good place. So maybe before you jump on to adding more hours, you could just try to find more ways to raise awareness about that.
Okay.
And I do think sending home test kits would be great, because some people are scared to get tested if they know they were exposed, but they don't want to stand in line with a ton of other people who might have COVID and then risk getting sick just from trying to find out if they are sick in the first place. That has bumped me trying to get tested back a couple of days before. And I'm sure a ton of other students have had the same problem.
That's very good insight. Thanks.
For me, just like being at school, like just if I do a lot of reflecting, but so I kind of knew this was gonna come up, but like for me, it was like when we first went to like back to school, it was like mask, one-way hallways, and the plexiglass, and then like also half our school was there, half our school wasn't there. So now seeing it, this is probably the closest like normal before 2019 we're getting so far, because when we went back I don't even know the years because it's been a blur low key, I'm not gonna lie. But just like going to school now, it's like, okay, I have to wear a mask, but at least our hallways are now 2 ways still. And then like there's no plexiglass. It's a room full of students instead of half of the students not being there. And it's like I'm actually doing group projects again and stuff. So like, and some students don't wear the mask. Yes, like the mask, because a lot like people can have their opinions, but like I wear my mask and it does. I don't know. I'm not a health professional, but like I like what Jamie said earlier. I just do what I'm told at the end of the day, and just like what the health professionals say and stuff. So like now going to school is better than going to school in 2020, maybe. You know the year, yeah, that year when like I had plexiglass and everything. But with like the take-home test and like tests in general, because I was on campus kind of when like take-home test is. I'm right now quarantining, great, but not great, but like yeah. Anyways, so I heard stories that like some people didn't take it serious. People thought it was like they're like, oh, it's like a pregnancy test. Like people took it as a joke, and then people like took it in class, but then they like tested positive in class. So then they were like, you need to go home. So like it's nice, convenient, but it's also like people took it serious. So it's like you get those students when they don't take it serious, like they don't take math seriously, but then you get those students who actually like genuinely need it and they actually like care for it, and they like if they can't get tested because their parents can't take them or something, or like what Ren was saying, like they don't want to go because like they have symptoms or they could not have it, and then they get it from standing in that line. Like, so it's like nice, but like I think what Carl said earlier, maybe like requesting it, like, oh, can I like pick it up if for the people who like, because I genuinely I get tested at like Cal State San Marcos. The line is outrageous, but I have a disabled brother, so we have like the handicap, so I go with when he gets tested. But so like that's lucky for me because I get to skip the line. But all those people who stand 6 hours, so it's nice to know we do have 15-minute lines, because my sister did tell me only like 6 people's in line when we do get tested, because my school is one of the testing sites. I'm pretty sure. I'm 99% sure. But this is a lot of information. I just like talking about sometimes, but hopefully I had some useful information in there.
Yeah, I think, the students are right. And, it sounds like just more access is probably the best answer. Just access to tests, access to the district office, just access. That's the key.
Access and information. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And I am just going to say, just whatever method you come up with for distributing like the take-home test, just as long as you can make it as accessible and as quick and painless to get them as possible. If you set up like a designated stall in the nurse's office or something, and I don't know, students can just grab a test from there, or if you have just designated places to pick it up or ways to drop it off, just whatever you think of, just make it as easy to get as possible and make sure everybody knows about it. Just, I'm really emphasizing this.
Maybe dispensing machines in the bathrooms.
Okay, so that is extremely helpful in terms of what we can do to, at the bare minimum, it sounds like, get the word out to students. Specifically, it sounds like that we have testing available to them, and then making take-home tests available as we're able. I know they're pretty hard to get right now. Although right now you can go onto USPS website, and the government is giving every household gets 4 free tests, and you just put your name and address onto their site, and they will mail you 4 free tests. And so everybody can go onto that site right now and put it in, and eventually you'll get them. I don't know when, but that's their plan. But I think we can try to at least have some sort of stock of tests that we don't necessarily send to everyone, but at least are available to students who would like to have them. If that's feasible situation, I don't know if it is or not.
That's the question. Up until they were very, very, very hard to find. I don't know if Aaron can speak to that, the availability of those tests at this point.
Yeah, they're starting to get easier, right? There's more places that people can access them now. All healthcare companies have to pay for them for their members. But we can certainly try to get some, but we can't guarantee it because there definitely is shortages. We're grateful for the allocation that the state gave us, but we're not hearing that they're going to give another allocation to schools at this point in time. So we can try to get tests, but we really can't guarantee it because of the shortage right now.
I'd be happy to donate some tests.
Okay, masks, I think kind of same thing. I don't know that we need to do anything different than what we're currently doing, although I think that it would be nice to have the the N95, KN95 masks available to staff if we're able and if they want them, but I don't think it should be mandatory. Like, I don't feel like we need to make anything mandatory that's not already mandatory, first of all. And then, but I think that for people who want those extra things, that as we're able, it would be nice to make them available specifically for staff.
We were prepared to just start distributing N95 masks to all employees that requested one tomorrow, but because of our staffing shortages and we had some other issues with getting the masks prepped, we had to postpone that. But we hope by sometime within the next couple of weeks we'll be able to get the N95 masks out to all the employees that have requested one. And we have about 500 of our employees have requested one at this point in time.
Okay.
The state is sending N95 masks to us for all of our students and staff. And we received about 25% of our allocation today. But we only received the adult size mask. So we're working on, a plan to have those available. So I believe at some point we will make them available to students. Again, not required for the students to wear N95, but if they want one, we'll be able to provide some.
Awesome. That's really good to know. That kind of gets into quarantine and that 4-page decision tree and that whole mess. And my biggest concern over this whole thing, which has been our ability to stay open and keep campuses open, not because people are sick, but because people are out on quarantine, whether you have a whole class that's absent or whether you have, enough teachers or enough admin who are absent to where, because we experienced this last December, where we had to close a few sites, not because we had major outbreaks, but just because we didn't have the staff to keep the site open. And I know that the governor loosened up significantly the sub rules. And I know that we sent out a communication to our families about that. And I clicked the link and it was only for student teachers. In terms of if you wanted to be a sub. And I feel like if our main goal is keeping our sites open, and that is something that certainly the community is very vested in as well, the more people who are able and understand what you need right now is a bachelor's degree and to be able to pass a background check, and we can have subs. I feel like that needs to be a bigger thing because it feels like we're going to need to be relying on that for a while. There's been a sub shortage period, but if we can get our own parents vested in this as they have time, I think that can prevent some of these closures that may not need to happen just because we have people available. But if we do that, then I would also like to have some sort of robust orientation, because I don't know that I could get dropped into a 12th grade, math class and survive the day.
Right.
So I don't know.
I'm totally with you on that, Stacy. We have parents that want to help. They don't know what to do. This is a great way for parents to actually be involved and to keep our schools open so we don't have to create situations that are not safe and healthy for our kids, and create additional learning loss. So really, we're campaigning for cafeteria workers, bus drivers, and subs, and just getting the word out to really for our community to know why we're doing this. And it's not going to replace a teacher, but when the teacher's out ill, there needs to be someone who can cover for that class for that day or days.
Yeah, Henry can probably speak to this from the HR perspective. There are more requirements than just college degree, but I don't know, Henry, do you want to speak to those efforts?
Yeah, it's a challenge that really every district is facing. We are trying to think of different ways to attract others. One of the things the governor did was basically suspend the period of time that after you retire as a teacher, that you have to sort of wait on the sidelines, if you will, before coming back. You know, it had been 180 days. But that honestly isn't super helpful, just because, for example, our teachers that would have retired, say, at the end of last school year, they've already met the 180-day requirement. You know, by the time you get to January 1st, you've done it. So we are, you know, although I'm not sure that's going to help. What we are looking to do is, one, there's another like sub, almost like job fair, if you will, that's coming up. I think it's right around February 5th. So we're looking to try to have a presence at that. I think it's on a Saturday, see if that helps a little. We're also looking at the possibility of, again, additional messaging to parents that maybe have never thought about doing this, but might be interested. And then also to any teachers that maybe retired from our district, say in June, hadn't really thought about coming back. I mean, they could come back now, even without the governor's most recent executive order, but we're thinking about reaching out to them and just saying, I don't know, have you thought about it? Because anything we can get would be helpful. I mean, even if we had a retired teacher, say from June of 21, who really wasn't thinking about it, but would be willing to sub once a week, once every other week, it's better than nothing. So we're going to reach out to those folks. We didn't have a ton of retirements last year, but we'll see if any of those folks would be interested in helping out, you know, whenever they might be interested and or willing.
Is it like, because this could be a really terrible idea too, that I just threw in your guys' lap. And if it is, just tell me for real. But like instructionally, like, is it just a complete nightmare to say, hey, let's just have a bunch of parents volunteer to, you know, to fill in as needed? Like, is that even a feasible thing? Or do we just want to kind of stay away from that? And that's just a terrible idea and I'll stop talking about it.
Well, before you answer, I want to add on to that question, because we did get the notification that Governor Newsom signed a temporary executive order allowing for local educational agencies to issue a 30-day emergency substitute credentials.
Right.
You know, so with that all in mind, back to Stacy's question.
Is it a good idea or is it not a good idea?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that it's going to solve, certainly instructionally, probably not going to help on that front. We are still going to need to have some supervision, you know, in terms of school employees, even if we did have, say, larger groupings of students where maybe we tried to put three classrooms together, if you will, so that we could try to supervise and make sure the students were safe. If parents say were volunteering to assist with that, if assuming they didn't want to try to get the substitute teaching credential and that sort of thing, you know, that can help in terms of supervision. I still think we're going to need a school employee to have some presence even in those larger groupings of students.
Henry, could you speak on any of the requirements of that emergency credential? Like, is it just a free-for-all, or does it require certain things in order to get that?
Well, I think one thing that's very important to know about it is there was a reference a couple minutes ago about the background check. So keep in mind, we're still going through those channels. So it's not like that's getting waived in terms of those requirements. And so, you know, can that take a little time? It can. Now we've had mixed results in terms of fingerprints. You know, we have some that are back within 24, 48 hours. We have others, depending on, an individual circumstances, where it could take a month, and it's not because there was a problem, in terms of there was like a criminal background, issue. Sometimes it's just backlog, of fingerprinting at the Department of Justice, that sort of thing. So, is the state or the governor trying to streamline things, at least for a few months? Yes, because you think about, one of the other things he did with this executive order is sort of waiving for a certificated employee that's retired the annual earnings max. Okay, well, that's like $48,000. So did we really have any substitutes that were retired teachers that are working now that are going to exceed that? Probably not. And keep in mind that expires at the end of March anyway. So, if we have people that are interested, we've always tried to be creative in terms of trying to get them processed as quickly as possible. Sometimes, for example, if say downstairs where there's fingerprinting through the county, if we've heard on occasion, well, we're really booked for a week or two or whatever, then we've tried to identify other places to get our candidates fingerprinted. And we've got another spot in Vista that can be, a much faster turnaround. So I think it honestly just starts with, is anybody willing to basically accept this role? And so I like the idea of us continuing to reach out, get the word out there, because like I said, even if we get just one or two or three more, it helps, because definitely we are stretched thin right now. That's absolutely not an exaggeration. And I would say that it's unfortunate. It's probably because of the holidays, people getting together. And so, spiking in terms of number of cases. But, I think somebody said this earlier, we have sites that are really doing a heck of a job to scramble. I mean, we have multiple principals, assistant principals that are trying to be in classrooms, honestly, to try to help with contact tracing. So our site administrators are wearing so many hats. And I was talking to Steve Baum earlier today, and he was talking about how the Ed Services team and other district office divisions are trying to send folks out to help, really to kind of triage on a daily basis. So I'm hopeful. I've kind of read that, perhaps this thing's going to spike here in the next couple of weeks, I think is what I read. That would be welcome news, to be honest, to this district and any other district.
So in order to get an emergency credential, you would have to have a bachelor's degree, a background check that goes through, and you also have to pass there's another test, right? That you have to pass, the CBEST test.
Yeah, the CBEST.
So those are the three requirements that you would, right?
And the CBEST part is probably, if somebody's saying, look, hey, I never really thought about it, I might be interested now. That's, if anything's going to delay this a bit, it's probably that there.
Right. That I wasn't sure if the governor had said that has been waived too. And I figured that was probably one of the things holding people back. But that's all that I have to say on the topic.
Yeah, the CBEST is definitely the biggest hoop to jump through, and it's the biggest gatekeeper. It's sixth grade writing and reading and math, but a lot of people, for whatever reason, pass it. So we reaching out to our retired teachers, that just invite, and our parents that do have the CBEST, who may have a teaching background, and also our student teachers. I think we're exhausting all those areas because, I'm a teacher, right? I teach fourth grade, and my kids have not had intervention since I don't know when, because the intervention teacher is pulled. Some days my kids have missed PE because the PE teacher is pulled, but we still have to teach PE. It's great when people show up from the district, but they also have a job to do, right? I mean, and people that are TOSAs, they also have a job. So, ideally, having a plan is of reaching out to the various groups, and but if CBEST is still required, then we're back to square one, because a lot of people are not going to take that test, and so we're back to scratching our heads again unless we tap into the retired pool or the student teachers.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's all hands on deck right now. That's the thing. And just to the extent that we can do it, I know that we have community resources, and I just want to make sure that we're utilizing our community resources to the greatest extent that we can to help everybody, right? I mean, we're all spread way too thin, and to the extent that we can avail ourselves of help, I feel like we should be doing that. That's all. I think that was kind of the point that I made.
Stacey, I really appreciate you having us talk about this because of the Brown Act, we're not able to talk about it, and you provided the opportunity and forum. So I appreciate it, and I really appreciate your feedback, Henry, with the staffing, and also and everyone's voice. And Jamie, I'm not a medical doctor, but it's like I'm glad our opinions are being asked. And Ren, and Chanel, I appreciated your feedback and being so unfiltered and sharing the student perspective, because that's what we also need to be hearing. And thank you to all the parents who are still with us. You've shared your perspective every month, and we have listened, and we do hear what you have to say. And so thank you for always providing your opinion and your perspective, because you entrust us with your kids, and we appreciate hearing from you. So thank you.
I just want to add to like our district staff. If you guys need, I mean, I'm a resource. Use me where you can. I was practicing my CBEST until I learned that a board member couldn't be a substitute teacher. So, when I'm not one, I'll go for it.
Okay, well, thank you. I wanted to, we get so many requests, we get so many questions, and I just kind of wanted to give an opportunity for the board to discuss kind of whatever might be on our minds and what we're hearing. And, if we've got some burning thing that needs to be said, I felt like we needed to just have time to get it out there. So it sounds to me like really we're kind of carrying on with our, priority number one is keeping schools open. Our safety mitigation standards, I think, are working. We have less than 0.5% transmission, and to the extent we're basically continuing to follow state and county guidelines as we can. And I don't know that we're really planning on implementing anything further than that or deviating from that at all, is kind of what I'm hearing.
I have a question. I know this CDC went back and said 5 days. Where are we at with that? Has it impacted us yet?
So I'll just say, and I don't know if Tiffany, if you want to jump in there, but it's important to remember that the CDC is national, and it's a CDPH here in California that gives us our guidance. Yeah. So, and I'm glad you brought that up, though, because people hear CDC on the news and, okay, what are you guys doing? And so we can't do anything until CDPH or locally here HHSA changes their rules.
So it's still 10 days.
We are updating based on the county decision trees. So we got our latest one today. So we will be updating, and they are looking at CDC. The 5 days will be with recommended testing, etc.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys, for doing that and staying late. And I think that that pretty much wraps up the meeting. The next regular board meeting of the governing board will take place Tuesday, February 15th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.